The good old days were really never that good, believe me. The good new days are today, and better days are coming tomorrow. Our greatest songs are still unsung.
The theme of Masterpiece Living is that when you come towards this stage of your life, the autumn of your life, or maybe the winter for some of us, we tend to think that everything is downhill, that we're going to lose some of our, or maybe all of our faculties. And the point of Masterpiece Living is to stress that no, you might have hit your peak, and your peak may be behind you, but there can be a plateau of living where you either eradicate or minimize the loss of some of your faculties.
The core value of Masterpiece Living was to try and engage people, all the residents here at Holly Creek, regardless of their physical or mental condition, in some activity that would enhance their lives. We looked for a number of ways that we might reach out and find the little niche of passion or something, how we could motivate some of the people who were perhaps tied to their apartments too consistently.
One of the things I really appreciate, but I don't know if it's an answer to your question, is that I really feel sincerely that this organization is run from the ground up, and that when we being people who live here, have ideas, they're taken into consideration.
This is a wonderful program, educational, spiritual, and not only physical but mental health and mental awareness and using one's mind. The programs are fantastic, and I try to go to all of them.
Trying new things makes life much more interesting. I mean, whether it's trying different restaurants, which is easy to do, or doing pottery, which is, for me, very difficult to do.
I think it's an attitude. It's not just activities, but it's a whole attitude of how you're going to function as you're in your 70s, your 80s, your 90s, and I think we even have somebody here who's 100.
I call it the policy and the practice of Masterpiece Living, to have an enriched life and to do things and keep as active, to put the mind, the body, and the spirit as possible. And I said, oh, it reminded me of the Robin Williams movie where he was the professor. I think it was a high school rather than a college, in a private school in the Northeast. And he said, carpe diem, seize the day. That's what, if you follow the opportunities given to you by Masterpiece Living, you can seize the day.
All of these things make people feel that they truly have a life that is worthwhile, that has accomplished something, and that is appreciated. And I think, to me, that's sort of the core value of Masterpiece Living.
Social is big for me here. I was having trouble at home with the fact that my 4 best friends either died or moved away. And all of a sudden here, I was counting how many people I know, and I think yesterday there were 93 of them.
Well, it's part of my life. I like people and get along with people pretty well most of the time. I am not real outgoing, so I don't really make friends real easy, but I made a lot of friends since I moved in here.
Well, I used to be so shy, I wouldn't talk to anybody. And then I took a Dale Carnegie course, and I came out of my shell, and ever since you can't stop me from talking.
And just going to the various activities, you're increasing your social life because you meet people in one place or the other, and you might not have known them very well before, and you say, okay, let's go have dinner. Well, once you have dinner with somebody here, you know everybody's life story, and you find out that you like this and they like that, and you make more and more and more friends.
I see people prospering because of the social aspects of getting out, meeting people, enjoying life because of their camaraderie with other individuals. And quite frankly, Holly Creek is like a small community. Everybody knows everybody else, and everybody is very attentive to other people's problems and so forth. And I think that that's a wonderful thing. And I think socially, we are a very strong community.
I think just moving here and meeting a lot of people helped some. And I think like the Fiddler on the Roof, the practices and things like that, we mingled quite a bit socially. That was very helpful.
The social components that you guys provide for us is wonderful.
It's food for life, I'll put it that way.
And in the social, this is a wonderful social community where everybody is very friendly, supportive, loving, and happy. And believe me, it's a community that is unique and wonderful because of, I think, the emphasis of those 4 components and the other aspects that it manifests here at Holly Creek.
Our individual programs.
Yeah.
What was one of the first ones we did was entitled Neurobics. And this was a program by Masterpiece Living, which is in the intellectual sphere. It helps you deal with things like memory and problem solving and
Thinking creatively.
Thinking creatively. And this was again one of those programs that was developed through research, and you could use the results of that to continue to stimulate your intellectual activity. In fact, one of the things that was recommended there by Patrick was this web-based thing called Lumosity, which I'm still doing.
Yes.
Exercising my brain. Neurobics is about exercising your
Yeah.
brain and your intellect, and keeps you lively that way.
I like learning new things that have nothing to do with my background.
The intellectual is something that my personality is such that I like to learn.
I think intellectually, I see a number of people attending various events and bringing them back to the dinner table and talking about them and so forth. And the mind stimulation, I think, is extremely important at this time in life to continue to enjoy life and get the most out of it.
One that is very important is the fitness, especially the exercise, which I have been lacking in performing for my benefit.
The things that interest me right now are the balance class, which I really need, and has been incredibly helpful to me.
Well, it helps your attitude. I mean, I've experienced it, and other people have experienced it, plus I've read time and time again how, getting moving gets the endorphins going. That's one of the things, which gives you a feeling of well-being. And when you have a feeling of well-being, you have a better attitude. You enjoy life more.
The first things when we got here, soon after, Patrick, who is the coordinator of Masterpiece Living, had a mobility review, and so on one day everybody who wanted to was invited to come down to the fellowship center, I think.
Fellowship Hall.
And we went to a bunch of stations, and we were tested on our ability to walk and how strong our upper body strength was and how much balance
flexibility.
we had, flexibility. And then they gave us a little report, and they showed us how we scored against people our own age and level. And then they suggested, well, you might want to work on balance, and we have these balance exercise classes, or you might want to work on upper body, and we have upper body. Plus, there's always the gym, the exercise room where you can do those things.
And they'll do this again in a year to
Yeah.
make sure, check us out. We got a baseline, and now did we improve? Did we stay the same? Did we unfortunately Decline.
Hopefully not.
Physically, of course, everybody wants to maintain a certain physical goodness about themselves, and to find that extra measure of life that you get when you're feeling well and feeling strong and able to do things. And though we get along in life and many times have to look to other devices to help us move about and so forth, it's still, if we are in the best of health for whatever we're capable of doing at any point in time, we enjoy life considerably more.
The balance challenges me because I took a fall a few years ago and had a concussion and lost a lot of my balance. And so I'm recouping a lot of my balance. Like, for instance, standing on one foot was impossible for me 2 months ago. Now I can do it for like 30 seconds.
I will be 90 on March the 13th, and my goal is to go to California, where my family resides, and jump out of an airplane, with a parachute, of course.
Certainly, if you look at all the spiritual things that are incorporated in everything virtually we do, we find that God's grace is really very abundant here, and you can count many ways every day that you prosper because of God's grace.
Suggested that we start a class in meditation, I guess because I wanted to find out where I was and what I believed. And the meditation has been very good. It's answering a need for me like crazy.
The other thing which I love is the pottery class. I just like working with my hands. It's something I've never done before.
Successful aging means living your life fully at each stage of living. And at this stage of living, I think there's as much living and wonderful things to engage in and opportunities to express oneself and so forth as there is in any other time of life. It is these aspects of Masterpiece Living and what it manifests that enables us to live not only fully, but very satisfyingly. And to me, that's successful aging.
I don't think that successful aging means what I thought it was going to mean. Before we moved out here, I would have said just being healthy and living your life. But out here we do so many interesting things that I really don't feel that aging as much as I know I'm going to in a few years.
Well, successful aging means to be able to do things that I like, things that are new to me, particularly, and there's lots of that here.
In Latin, they said a sound mind in a sound body. In corpus rea, in mens rea.
Well, I think that it's very important, because if you've lived a longish, because now life is growing longer, you've probably had a lot of experiences, a lot of fun experiences, and you want to keep being able to do that. If you don't have those opportunities, and if you don't have people who are working with you to provide ideas for those kinds of opportunities, you're probably going to end up being more
isolated. You
Yeah.
turn in on yourself. You
Yeah.
do not participate in life fully. And sure, as you're aging, there's bound to be some limitations one way or another. I've got some fairly serious physical limitations. But what I have to do is try to compensate for that, well, do the best I can physically, but compensate for it by also doing these other things, the intellectual, the social, and the emotional.
Yeah.
And if you can do as much of that as possible, then you're not going to just sit in your apartment and
Grumpy.
feel sorry for yourself.
And that's one of the things that here at Holly Creek, you don't see people doing that. You don't see that face. You see happy faces.
Yeah.
No matter where you go.
You know, it's an interesting thing. I had lunch today, as a matter of fact, with a so-called person who was very skeptical about the value of Masterpiece Living and wondering what it cost us each month and so forth, and how you equate that to, you know, what the value of it really is. And in talking about it, most of the people who are detractors here, who don't really see the value of Masterpiece Living, do not really understand how the basic core philosophy of Masterpiece Living brings forth a number of the things that we do that you don't necessarily associate with Masterpiece Living. They look at the individual programs that Masterpiece Living does and they say, well, couldn't we do that without Masterpiece Living? We could. Most communities don't, though, because they don't have something to motivate them to do it, such as Masterpiece Living's basic program. And I really think that if you look at all the subtle ways that we're prospering here because of the basic philosophy of Masterpiece Living, it's pretty hard to say that it isn't of extreme value, and whatever we're paying is highly worth it. But that's hard sometimes to convey to some people if they only concentrate on just the dollars and worry about what's being spent rather than what's being received.
Here's something that's going to give you a smorgasbord of activities. And it would be helpful to you and enjoyable for you to participate in as many of these as you can.
Why are you a detractor?
Well, the first thing I would say to them is, well, what's your problem? I mean, that's probably not very polite, but I would say, do you realize how many programs here at Holly Creek are initiated by Masterpiece Living?
And
It's not just filling these things out, it's actually having a place to do something and a place to go and people to be with. And if you don't want to be part of it, well, that's your problem. But boy, I bet if you were.
Yeah, and a lot of the people we've talked to about it don't seem to realize how much of what goes on here is directly Masterpiece Living or is encouraged by and initiated by Masterpiece. What's Masterpiece Living? How much does it cost? I don't. And then when you start saying, well, there's this, and this, and oh, really?
Yeah, they just don't seem
Aware.
But I mean, I don't hear a lot of that. But then they probably wouldn't say that to me because I'm always talking about Masterpiece Living. I think it's wonderful.
I'll just add one more thing. One of the sessions we had early on, while we were still considering Holly Creek, Patrick was talking about something, and I don't remember the man's name or anything like that, but he was a blogger, I think, for the New York Times. He'd retired. He was writing about assisted living and stuff like that.
Yes.
And the first place that he had gone to assisted living, he said, was just terrible. It was one of those warehousing kinds of places. Nobody did anything and all of that sort of stuff.
And everybody was glum.
Everybody was glum. And this was, a fairly important New York Times type guy. And he left there, went to a place that had Masterpiece Living, and all of a sudden he was writing about, there was one other program, national program, I don't remember what it was, but he said that program in Masterpiece Living, that's what aging should be like.
Yeah, that's what it should be about.